to sign the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure, right? I'm asking him to sign it because I want him to acknowledge that I went over this form. The Working with Real Estate Agents brochure is a disclosure form, okay? It's not a contract. Can someone prove that this is not a contract? It literally says this is not a contract. Okay, but I want him to acknowledge that I went over it. Do you see where he acknowledges that I went over it? He puts his name and stuff there. I put my name. I put my license number there. I want you to look down at the bottom of that page. Unfortunately, that printing is very, very small and you might not be able to tell what it says. But down at the bottom of that flap, it says Disclosure of Seller Subagency. Disclosure of Seller Subagency. I'm asking Arthur to initial that I have disclosed that I am a seller subagent. Are you with me? Why do I, the agent, want that in writing? I tell you, this is a tough position to be in. He has said I can drive him around. He has said I can show him houses. And I told him, if he doesn't choose me as his agent, I'm working for the seller. I'd like it acknowledged somewhere that he is aware of that. And that's where we get his acknowledgement, okay? I'm not a buyer's agent. I am a seller subagent. It is legal, and that's where you acknowledge it. That's where you have it reduced to writing, and you take that tab, you put it in your folder, and you keep it for 3 years, even if you never see him again. Does everybody understand my setup? Would it be correct to call Arthur a buyer, not client, but buyer what?
Customer.
He is a buyer customer. Do you remember the concept of a customer? This is the third party. It is said that I work with a customer. You work for a client, but you work with a customer. She can show him houses, okay? So she's out driving around showing Arthur houses, okay? Eventually, they see this house right here. They see Adam's house on the market for $350,000. And Arthur says, I would like to make an offer on that house. I love that house. It looks beautiful. Okay? I want you to freeze everything real quickly. At this point, is there anything we need to put in writing at this point?
Your agency
The
agreement?
what?
No,
No, but you
Say, why not?
because he didn't sign already and working for the seller, it's like, yeah, that's $350, but I would offer $350, or if the market's going good, even more than that.
Stop and go back to what you said to start with, okay? At that point in time, you feel like you should fill out an agency agreement, right? But you're not his agent. You would only fill out the buyer agency agreement if you were in verbal buyer agent. But in this case, he's already acknowledged I work for the seller, hasn't he? So there's nothing else to reduce to writing. We can write up the offer. Now, Mike, back to your point. Back to your point. Here's what Arthur says. Arthur says, I love that house. It appears to be correctly priced at $350, but my daddy said, never make your first offer your best offer. Okay? So I'm going to offer $325 on that house. So Al helps him write up an offer at $325. They write up an offer at $325, but he said, man, I'd go to $350 if I had to. I really want that house. All right, Al, you're going to jump in your Prius, and you're going to ride across town. And eventually, you get over here to Mike. Where's Mike? Mike's over here. Mike, she's going to hand you this offer, and then Al, what are you going to say when you hand him that offer?
He'll go as high as $350.
Here's our offer of $325, but I had reason to believe that he would go as high as $350. Are you with Al that she should give that information up? Because she works for whom? She works for the seller. All right, let's see how this is going to work. Mike, you jump in your Hummer and go to Adam's house. So you're up here at his house. Adam, you have an offer on the table at $325. We have reason to believe that he'll go to $350. What do you want to do?
I want to try to go to 350.
Okay, what we call a counter offer, right? So what he's going to do, he's going to take the $325, he's going to scratch through the $325, and he's going to put $350. Who is now the offering party?
So,
The seller is now the offering party, correct? Okay, so now Adam is essentially making an offer of $350,000. By the way, that definition of a counter offer is extraordinarily important. I need you to understand two things. A counter offer was a rejection of the $325, right? 325 no longer exists. If that buyer doesn't come back at 350, it's not like you can just go back and say, well, I'll take 325. No, sorry, you've already rejected that, okay? A counteroffer is a rejection coupled with a new offer. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. All right, Adam has chosen to counteroffer this at 350. And so Mike helps him write it up. So Mike helps him write it up. Mike jumps in his car, brrr, drives across town, gives that to Al. Al, you now have an offer in your hand of 350, and you take it up here to Arthur. Y'all meet at the Dunkin' Donuts. Now I need all of you to visualize this scene right now. Can you visualize the Dunkin' Donuts? And I'm not talking about visualizing the point about waiting in line. I'm talking about after you have your donuts. You're sitting there at the table, the little round table that they have. You're across from each other, all right? Al hands the counteroffer to Arthur and says, well, they've countered at 350. And Arthur says, 350? How do they know I go to 350? And Al says, well, I told them. Actually, Al, you're hoping it won't come up. But the fact of the matter is you had to tell them, you told them that you were going to tell them a little bit earlier, okay? Forget all that. You're sitting at the table. Watch this. Al has an offer of 350 on this table. Arthur, you said you'd go all the way, full price, right? So what are you going to do to that offer?
Sign it.
You want to sign it? Here's my question to you guys. Is it a contract?
No, because it has to be related.
It's gotta be put back to the seller or its agent.
Tim is the only one that's right now, and I don't know if he's having a spasm or if he's actually saying yes. But if you're saying yes, it is a contract. Can you defend your offer? I mean, your argument.
Yeah, he's the buyer, he's the buyer of the property. He accepted the offer acceptance,
But remember, what does it have to have before it becomes a contract?
acknowledgement of the other agent.
What we call communication.
Right.
There has to be offer. Would you agree that there was an offer, 350? Would you agree that there was acceptance?
Yes.
Right.
I'm going to argue that there is communication. Because who did he sign it in front of?
Sub-agent of the seller,
Who does Al work for?
the seller.
Do you remember the paragraph that said, notice can be given, communication could be given to the party or to such party's agent? How you like them apples, Kara? You got it?
Yeah, so.
Now, I would ask for questions, but I don't want them right now, okay? I want to get a couple of these under your belt. Trust me when I say we're going to go through all the permutations of this, so you're going to, every question you have in your head, we probably are going to answer here in just a few minutes, okay? All right, offer, acceptance, and communication. Al actually works for the seller in this case. I heard a heavy sigh. Was that going to be followed by a question? Okay, all right. Do me a favor, let me run through this real quickly, the exact same scenario, okay? Arthur is driving up I-95, he sees the signs, welcome to Raleigh. He shows up there, they talk small talk for a little bit, finally it reaches a first substantial contact, she goes over to work in real estate agent's brochure, she does it in three-part harmony, and then she looks at Arthur and says, can I be your agent? And for some reason he says no. We're at the same place, right? They ride around looking for houses all over the place, they eventually find Adams for $350,000. This time Arthur's in a hurry to get a house, so he says, let's make a full price offer. Okay? So Arthur, here's what's going to happen. With Al's help, you write up a full price offer. Okay? She takes it down here to Mike, $350. Adam, it's exactly what you're asking for, and there are no other offers on the table. What do you want to do?
Probably go with it.
I would.
Yeah.
I would. No other offers on the table, and it's full price. Heck, I'd go for it. Would you agree that we had an offer? Would you agree, Adam just signed it, would you agree that we had acceptance? He gives it to his agent. Do we have a contract?
No. That's what I told Arthur. Yeah.
Mike takes it to Al. Do we have a contract yet?
Yes. Yeah. No.
Is
We're
it
not
not-
the seller still.
is Al's working for the seller as well.
Al calls up Arthur and says, congratulations, we have a what? Contract. Only, now, I want you to look at my wall of separation there, my dotted line. Arthur is on a team all by himself in this case because he chose not to be represented. Al has to be an agent of somebody. If she's not an agent for the buyer, she is going to be an agent of the seller. Does that make a little bit of sense? Okay. As you see these other permutations, I want you to be thinking about what are you looking for in test questions as you're reading these test questions. ABC, XYZ, words like buyer customer or seller sub-agent and stuff like that, okay? Ready for a new scenario? Let's try a new scenario. Arthur comes to town from Atlanta, Georgia. He shows up at Al's office. He shows up at Al's office. They have small talk. Eventually, it turns to first substantial contact. At first substantial contact, she whips out what? Say it. Working with real estate agents brochure. You can't shout it out until you say it. Karen. She whips out the what?
Working with real estate agents for sure.
You didn't say it with conviction. Say it with conviction.
Working with real estate agents for sure.
That's so cute when you say it. I'd sign it if you said it like that. Tim, let's hear you say it.
Working with agents brochure. I
Left out a word.
I abbreviated that. Working with real estate agents brochure.
And now you didn't look me in the eye when you said it. Look me in the eye and say it like you mean it.
Working with real estate agents brochure.
All right, after you've had a few bourbons, I want you to come back and try this again, all right? I want you to be compelling when you go over the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure.
Didn't tell me to sing it.
Listen, sometimes that helps. It gets their attention. At first substantial contact, she goes over the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure, describing to Arthur what his options are in North Carolina, and then she allows him to choose how he wants to be represented. Do you agree with me? Agents should not tell parties how they're represented. They should ask, can I represent you, okay? Hey, this time, Arthur, you're going to say yes.
Absolutely.
All right? Yes, you can be my agent. Now, watch this. She's going to have him sign the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure, right? But he's not signing it as a contract. The Working with Real Estate Agents brochure is not a contract. It's a what?
Disclosure.
A disclosure, and he's acknowledging that she went over the disclosure with him. What makes this an agency agreement is when she says, can I be your agent? And he said, yes. She described agency and then said, can I be your agent? And he said, yes. All right. Being the salesperson that Al is, she goes for the close now. Well, Arthur, can I get you to sign a written buyer agency and exclusive buyer agency agreement? She asked Arthur that. Arthur, you just met her. In this case, say no.
No.
Hey, let's try each other out a little bit. Let's get to know each other a little bit. Yeah, you're my agent, I'm with you, but I'm not ready to sign any, put anything in writing yet, okay? Is that a legitimate position to be in? She is now his buyer's agent. Would you agree that the wall of separation is now, we have Team Arthur and we have Team Adam over here. Would it be correct to call Arthur a buyer what, starting with the letter C?
Client.
Client. And would it be correct to call Al a what? A buyer what?
Agent.
A buyer agent, okay? She is a BA in this particular case. They ride around, they're looking at houses all over the place. They finally find this house right here, listed by Mike, Adam's house listed by Mike, and Arthur says, I want to make an offer on that house. All right, now I want to caution you. You have not inspired me yet this morning. You're looking a little bit down. I want to be inspired right now. Arthur just said, I want to make an offer on that house. What is the first document that needs to be signed at this point?
Buyer agency.
The buyer agency agreement, because remember, oral buyer agency was okay until no later than until the first offer to purchase, okay? All right, that was better. I don't know if I'd say I'm inspired yet, but I like the fact that you knew where I was going with that. Listen to this, Al. Arthur says, I believe that I'd buy that house at $350,000, but my daddy told me never make my first offer the best offer. So I want to offer $325, but I'd clearly go to $350 if we had to. You write up the offer at $325. Arthur signs the offer. You jump in your car. You come over here. You give it to Mike. Mike looks at the offer and says, $325. Man, that stinks. You think you'll go any higher?
No.
I wouldn't say that.
Come on, just between you and me. I need to get paid. Right? Have you had a commission lately? Will he go, is this his best deal, or will he go higher? Stick to your guns, Al. When you hand it to him, you say, dude, this is our offer. You deliver it. $325, she is not going to answer any confidential information about her client. Okay? All right, Adam, for expedience sake, I'm going to have you sign this, okay? Even though it's a little bit low. Mike takes it to you. It's at $325. I want you to sign it. Okay? Would you agree that we had offer Would you agree that when Adam signs it, we have acceptance at 3:25? Would you agree to that?
Yes.
Do we have a contract yet?
No.
Has not been what?
Communicated.
It's lacking communication at this point. Okay, everybody with me? Adam hands it to Mike, and Mike is going to run by Al's office and drop this thing off. However, on the way to Al's office, Mike drops by the bar. They're having happy hour, okay? And he drops in, and he has one margarita, okay? He rolls out of there at 11 o'clock. Adam signed this document at 5:30. That's when it was signed. Mike, at 11 o'clock, rolls out of the bar, calls Uber, and on the way home, he forgets. He said, I forgot. I don't care if a minute say it's a bad. That's what he says. So then he sends an email over to Al at what time? Shouldn't draw text. There's no telling what it says. But what he's trying to say is that in fact, that the offer has been, the offer has been accepted. Here's what he didn't realize. At 6 o'clock, Arthur had said, you know what, I changed my mind about that house. I'm going to move back to Atlanta. I don't want that house. He called his agent Al. And at exactly 6:37, Al called and left I didn't call, I'm sorry. Al sent a email to Mike, which he never picked up because he was in the bar. That email said, we are rescinding the offer on that house right there. So here's my question to you. Do we have a contract or not? And if we do, at what time did it become a contract? Who would like to take that on? Al. Do we have a contract? We do not have a contract because what happened?
6:37.
It was rescinded is the word that we'll use. Okay, rescinded or revoked, all right? The rescission happened before, the communication of rescission happened before the communication of acceptance, right? Okay, now, if you're going to do this in the future, Mike, go ahead and send your email before you go to the bar, all right? That will be fine. Because when we talk about acceptable forms of communication, calling someone on the phone and having them answer. Let's try that out. Bling, bling. Al,
Hello.
how you doing?
I'm well.
Good, good. Hey, listen, we just got that contract signed on 123 Elm Street. Congratulations, we're in the contract at 3:25. I'll get in touch with you later to start setting up inspections. Did she answer? Okay. Did I communicate?
Yes.
Yes. Was it in writing? Yes. We are fine. So can you communicate over the phone? But you need to talk to a live person. Do not leave a voicemail, okay? That's it. That could be a test question for you, by the way, to understand. Don't leave a voicemail if you call by phone. Make sure you talk to a person. What if it gets a little bit wackier? What if you were to send an email, or what if you were to send a fax? In other words, Mike, what you did is you went back to your office and you simply sent an email to Al. You sent the email. Would this have been an entirely different story if you had sent an email at 5:32? Let's go ahead and put email and fax into the same bucket. Would it have been different if you sent an email to her at 5:32, even if she did not read it? She doesn't read her emails until 7 o'clock in the evening?
Yes.
Yes. Write this down, please. Under the Uniform Electronics Transactions Act, and I'll save you a little trouble, the UETA, the Uniform Electronics Transactions Act, an email and a fax, under the UETA, an email or a fax are considered communicated, delivered. Considered delivered when it's received by the communication equipment of the recipient. Considered communicated when it's received by the communication equipment of the recipient. In other words, it's considered received when it's in your inbox, not when you've done what? not when you read it. Okay? So be careful about the way you choose to communicate. I don't know if you remember what Al read a little bit earlier, but it talks about in our contract, we tell people how we want to be communicated with. If you don't check your emails on a regular basis, good gosh, nobody checks their fax machine any longer. I don't even know if people still have fax machines. But having said that, if you don't check it, don't give them that address, because there could be something sitting there for 3 days that you didn't know about, but it was considered delivered at the time that roughly it was sent, okay? Because it happened that quickly. Under the Uniform Electronics Transactions Act, communication happens instantaneously when it's received by the communication of equipment of the recipient. You feel okay about that? All right. What did we learn in this particular exercise? Working real estate agent brochure, first substantial contact. You okay with that? And then, did you remember the part? Be careful. You were working under verbal buyer agency. Make sure you reduce that to writing before you make an offer. Okay? And then, the part about communication is clearly going to be important as well. Can you see how we're going to trick you in these questions? We're going to have a paragraph this long, and you're going to have to identify the parties, their relationships. When did certain things happen? Did the rescission take place before the communication of acceptance? Can you be that disciplined when you're looking at these? Okay? All right. Questions or comments now? You can throw any question that you want to at me today, at this point.
I have a question.
Who said that? Okay, go ahead, Christy.
Okay, so say we go back to like the first scenario. So Arthur comes in and he's like, no, I'm not ready to have an agent yet. Would it make, is there any time it would make sense where like, okay, he signed the acknowledgement, maybe he gives some kind of confidential information, like I really need to buy a house quickly, whatever, I don't know, whatever. But then he's like, actually, I really like you and I really like you to represent me after that point. Like what would happen?
Well, here's what happens. You can change horses in midstream if you want to. So in other words, he could go from a seller sub-agent, you could go from working as a seller sub-agent to working as a buyer agent. The problem is that you would have to ask the other party's permission, because all this time you've been working as a seller's agent. So I'm going to go to the seller and say, hey, will you give me the permission to switch now to become a buyer's agent? For the most part, they'll probably be okay with it. But if I were the seller, I'd say, well, tell me what you know about the buyer first.
Yeah.
That's what I would say before I allow you to switch. Once you give up all that confidential information, then I'd say, yeah, sure, work with me if you want to. To be quite honest with you, it does happen today that people do that. But agents are doing that because they don't understand how to ask the right questions. I gotta be honest with you, why would someone not choose buyer agency any day over seller sub-agency, at least from an oral standpoint? Okay? So think about that. You're given the option of oral buyer agency or seller sub-agency. Oral buyer agency, you could slip up and say bad stuff, and the agent couldn't do anything with it. You slip under seller sub-agency, the agent's supposed to take it back to the seller. Do you think they really do that? No. What they do sometimes is they say, we'll put off this agency discussion until a little bit later. For right now, let's just fill it in this way. They're scared to have the conversation, and they're breaking the rule every single day. Don't break the rule. Just get comfortable with this. Talk to the potential client and explain what agency means, and then have them sign this form and say, listen, you have nothing to lose with me working as your verbal buyer agent right now. It's not binding. In other words, it's not like I could enter into an oral buyer agency agreement that's going to hold you till December. They're open-ended completely. My thought is that the agents are just not explaining it correctly when you see those situations. Okay, great question there. What other questions do you have? Yes, I'm sorry.
How many houses, let's say, Al decided, Arthur decided that he's not gonna sign anything yet, or any contract.
Okay, hold on for just a second. Let's make sure we have it set up correctly.
Okay.
When she went over the Working with Real Estate Agents brochure and said, can I be your agent, what did he say?
He said no.
He said no?
Yes.
Okay, keep going.
How many houses can show him before I decided to say, well, we need to sign something.
Yeah, that's up to her business practices, okay? Let me bring up something very complicated that I guess it could possibly come up. I'm going to introduce it now, but I don't care that you understand it completely at this point. In the field, what's going on today is a lot of companies are not offering seller sub-agency. and you wonder about, you say, well, that's the way everybody used to do it. Why would some agencies not offer it now? Well, think about this. Do you remember the first scenario when Arthur was unrepresented and Al worked for the seller? What if Al had said something stupid in that case? Who could it have harmed? If she made a misrepresentation, it actually could have gone back on her seller through what's known as vicarious liability. You can be guilty based on the actions of another party, your agent, for example. Okay? So when you see the word vicarious liability, what that refers to is being responsible for the actions of another party. So a lot of firms today have said that they would not accept seller sub-agency. So the reason I bring that up on Patrick's question is, if you're an agent and you're out there working with a buyer and for some reason they haven't accepted buyer agency, realistically what you have to do is you need to pull up the MLS listings and see if they would even represent a seller sub-agent. If so, it doesn't make any sense for you to show a house that you don't have any possibility of getting paid for. Okay? Now, I know that's complicated and it's probably just a little bit above where we need to be on this. Here's our assumption for these test questions. Our assumption in here is if the buyer does not give you permission to be a buyer's agent, then by default, you're going to be working as a seller sub-agent. Okay? That's the significance of that. The significance of the word customer versus client as well. Okay? Good question. What else you got? Anything? Okay. We have seen seller sub-agency. We have seen buyer agency. What have we not yet seen?
Disclosed dual agency.
Say again?
Disclosed dual agency.
Yeah. Now we're going to look at dual agency as part of this transaction, okay? So now, let's look at this third scenario. What does Al need to do if this is going to be dual agency? She needs to switch firms. Al is now with A, B, C. Let me throw in one more permutation on this just as well. I know it hasn't come out of my mouth yet. So let me say this as well. She met Arthur. I lost my mic down here. Al met Arthur, and they talked a little bit. First substantial contact, working with real estate agent brochure. Can I be your agent? And he says yes. Hey, listen to this. What if Arthur refuses to sign the working with real estate agents brochure? Can she be his agent if he refuses to sign the working with real estate agents brochure? Can Al be his agent if he refuses to sign the working real estate agent's brochure?
I see, yes.
Patrick says yes. Can you defend your position?
It was, am I supposed to, show you a home or even better?
Let me make it easier on you. The working real estate agent's brochure is not a contract, is it?
No.
So therefore, you don't have to sign it. You remember the story I told the other day? If they refuse to sign, you can write refuse to sign, and then you put it in your file. Okay? Ultimately, at some point, that's not a good sign. If they're not willing to sign the working real estate agent's brochure, that makes me worried that they're going to be willing to sign anything in the future. But having said that, it's perfectly legal for you to work with someone that hasn't signed the working real estate agent's brochure. Just wrote refuse to sign, and make sure you keep a copy of that. All right, she's out selling, showing him properties. But he accepted her as his agent, right? She is a buyer's agent. They end up showing up at a house listed by, let me step out of the way here, listed by her firm, ABC and ABC. So now she goes back to him and says, Arthur, you remember us talking about dual agency just a little bit? Well, now dual agency has arisen. Will you give me the right, the ability to act as your dual agent in this case? He says, remind me what that means. Well, dual agency, I act more of a facilitator. I work for you, but I also work for the seller. I can't advance your interest over his. I can't advance his interest over yours. I'm just neutral in this particular case. And Arthur says, you know what? I trust you, Al. Show me the house. I'm okay with you working as my dual agent. Oh, by the way, interesting question for right now. I will dig deeper into it a little bit later. Is oral dual agency ever legal? Is oral dual agency ever legal?
Yeah.
Who said yeah? Can you defend your position?
Yeah, if you started your agreement with a buyer orally, then you're allowed to maintain that until you want to write the offer.
That is exactly the answer. Here's the way I normally ask students to write this down. in the days that oral buyer agency exists, oral dual agency can arise. In the days that oral buyer agency exists, oral dual agency can arise. In the days that oral buyer agency exists, oral dual agency can arise. Now keep in mind, this is not me recommending it. I'm just saying it clearly can arise. And here's what it's going to look like. Hey, Arthur, we're getting along pretty good now. You trust me, I trust you. It is dual agency, I know. But we're already here. Are you okay if we practice dual agency on this particular house? What say you? Okay, now I am his verbal dual agency. I want to put this in the back of your mind for right now. Oral dual agency can never arise out of written buyer agency, okay? That's going to be the rule, ultimately, when we talk about this farther. Okay, so Arthur is in dual agency. He allows for dual agency, and now it's time to write the offer. What's the first thing that we need to reduce to writing? The buyer agency agreement with the dual agency acknowledgement, right? Okay, now that we've reduced that to writing, now we can write up an offer. Now, let me remind you, we are in dual agency. ABC, informed consent, both parties. And now, Arthur, what does he say? The house is on the market for $350,000. But what'd your daddy tell you?
Do not accept the lowest, do not make the first offer your highest offer.
Don't make your first offer your best offer. So Arthur, listen closely what he tells Al. He says, Al, the house is $350. I clearly paid $350 for it, but I want to make an offer at $325 just to see where the other party stands. Okay, Al, you write up an offer of $325. He signs it. Well, what do you know about him? He'll go more. You drive over to Mike. Now, you guys could literally be in the same physical office, or you could be in the same firm, but at different offices. For example, at Go, we have 4 offices, but it's still one firm. All right? We practice dual agency. If you're practicing with any agent in any other office, it's still dual agency, okay? So she comes over here to Mike. Now, think about what Mike's going to say. Mike's going to say, man, $325, we've really been working hard for this seller right here. I'd like to get him more money. Al, do you think he would go higher? All right, dual agency, he has just asked. Al, do you think he will go higher? What's she going to say?
Yes.
Nothing. She can't
Don't say I don't know, because that would be a lie.
Well, she works for the seller.
She works
works
for
for
both.
both.
She works
She
for
works
both.
for
Yeah.
So she has to just say, here's our offer.
Do you remember what Christiana read in C1 a little bit earlier? If I know something about the other party, you're giving me permission to what? Not disclose it. Okay? So this is what Mike, I don't blame you for asking. Okay? But Al's going to say, that's our offer. And then somebody brought up the point over here, but she works for the seller. How can she not tell the seller that she knows the seller had given you permission that if this ever came up and it's dual agency, you have the permission to keep your mouth shut? Okay? So it's $325. That's our offer, Mike. Okay? Now, watch this. And Adam, for expedience's sake, you're going to go ahead and accept the $325. Now, I want you to watch closely. This is another one of those where you slow down for just a moment. We have an offer. Would you agree we have an offer? Mike takes it up here to Adam. Adam looks at it and says, golly, I really want it a little bit more. I need to sell my house. I'm going to sign it. Adam signs it in front of Mike at his dining room table in his house. He signed it at exactly 6:32 p.m. Mike gets the offer, and he takes